Back to My Garden, episode 32.
Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
What's the hottest trend in gardening? I think the hottest trend is aquaponics. Can you really grow a massive garden powered by fishies? Find out more and discover the secret to building fish-powered gardens at www.backtomygarden.com/fish. Do you love homegrown tomatoes? Then stay tuned. Coming up later in this episode, we have something special just for you. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another edition of Back to My Garden. Today we have a special guest joining us from Leicester in the United Kingdom over in England. Alison considers herself a passionate amateur gardener. Her gardening blog is spectacular, a feast for the eyes. And today, we'll chat about geraniums, nasturtiums, begonias, and heck, maybe even a little bit about wild gardening. I want to welcome Alison Levey to the show. Alison, welcome to Back to My Garden.
Hello, thank you for such a kind introduction.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm excited to talk to you, and frankly, my wife has a ton of questions that she wanted me to ask you. I want to get to know a little bit about your story, and our listeners definitely want to get to know you a little bit. Alison, can you just take a minute or two and share with us a little bit about your background and how you got into gardening?
Well, my parents don't actually do a lot of gardening at all, so most of my very early gardening was with my next-door neighbours. From a very early age, I used to go and spend Sundays with them, just following them around their garden when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and just fascinated in what they were doing and learning all the time. And still I do things today that I know that they taught me. And they just, I suppose they gave me a love of gardening and being outside. And then as I grew older, I tried to garden at my parents' house. I didn't do a lot. Mainly I had house plants at that time. Then, of course, you leave home, and I had houses of my own, and it's become really a strong obsession since then.
I understand. It's unusual that you didn't garden as a child with your parents. Very often it gets passed down that way from grandparent to parent, and you learned it from a neighbor.
Mm.
Fantastic. Do you remember when you decided as an adult, hey, I'm going to grow something? Was it in a pot or an allotment? What was the first garden you had as an adult?
As an adult, it was the very first house I had when I left home. And it had a tiny backyard that had a very thin strip of soil sort of going around it. And I remember just thinking, it just looked awful. It was just empty and bare, and I thought, I can't stand this. I'm going to try and grow something in it. And I must admit, I wasn't hugely successful with it, really. But it just was something to brighten it up, because it just looked miserable.
Oh, I love it. See, when I was looking on your blog, for those of you driving in your car listening to me and Alison talk about gardening, be safe. Don't, try to write anything on your phone. I'll put links in the show notes. It'll be at backtomygarden.com/32. And Alison has a gorgeous blog at www.blackberrygarden.co.uk. And her social media on Twitter, very active, at PAVER. You can follow Alison and share her photos. I notice you have how do I put this? You love color.
I do, yes.
You love color, and I can understand your first garden with a scruffy little patch of dirt. I love hearing that it wasn't a super success. So you weren't a brilliant gardener from the get-go. You made mistakes. Can you share a little bit about that side? What are some of the mistakes you made early on as a gardener?
I still make mistakes today. I think that's what gardening is. I think a lot of it was just trying to grow things and not understanding that they really do need the right conditions. And instead of thinking, actually, maybe I can't grow this plant, I would persevere and just keep killing poor plants. And so now, actually, I do sort of have like a 3 strikes and you're out rule. So if I've killed it 3 times, that's it. I'm not going to grow it again because it's throwing good money after bad, really. But one sort of spectacular example I had was I tried to grow a yew hedge, and my garden won't grow a yew hedge. The soil isn't right. It just wouldn't do it. So I gave up after 2 attempts because that really was quite expensive, and I planted a rose hedge instead. And it grows and it's beautiful, and it just, I suppose, taught me that you just, instead of persevering, sometimes you have to go, no, I've got to change course. I've got to do something else. And then when you look at it, you go, that's better, actually.
The first hedge that didn't work for you, you said yew. Is that Y-E-W?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I ought to know the Latin name, but I don't.
Oh, that's okay. Latin is highly optional on this podcast. You always get bonus points for Latin. The reason I asked is I used to read Robin Hood books when I was a kid. And, of course, he's over in the Midlands, Sherwood
close.
Forest, right?
Yes.
And they made their bows out of yew.
Yes. Well, I'm originally from Nottingham, so I know Robin Hood extremely well. Yes, well, that's because yew trees were planted in churchyards. So
Really?
They were very, very common.
And now you prefer roses, right? Roses have supplanted the yew.
They have, and I do. I love roses.
Your climate is quite a bit more temperate than a lot of our listeners, especially our Canadians. What was your winter like last year? What was your spring like this year? And I know you're having kind of a mixed summer.
We had an incredibly mild winter. Normally, we get quite a lot of frost. We don't get a huge amount of snow. We normally get a couple of inches every now and again that'll last for 2 or 3 days at most and cause absolute chaos. It's like the country grinds to a halt wherever it happens, even though it happens every year. But this year, we had virtually no snow and very few deep frosts. So plants that really should have died over the winter didn't. So, and it was quite a wet spring, so everything grew incredibly quickly. So it got very lush very fast.
And now you had was it a hot July and a wet August, or vice versa?
A very hot July, and August has given us a little bit of rain, but actually we could do with a bit more at the moment.
I love talking weather. Not that I'm a weatherman or anything, but there's so many conversations about climate change.
Yes, and I suppose for someone like me, who I generally am at work during the week, I garden at the weekends, I need to know what the weather's going to be like at the weekend so I can plan what I'm going to do. So I obsess about weather.
A lot of our gardening friends are in zonal denial. I live in a town near the Great Lakes. If you ever think of Canada and America, there's always a division with all these huge lakes. And there was no snow for 3 winters when we moved here.
Gosh.
And in November, we got 42 inches in a 24-hour period. 42 inches, 4 feet high. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yes, if we get 4 inches, as I say, it's chaos. Absolute chaos.
We sometimes get British television on the news over here when you get storms. And what's that big highway from London going up to Blackpool, like M5 or M1?
There's the M1 goes from London up to Leeds.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people are abandoning their cars, and there's like a half an inch of snow on the ground.
Yes, people get trapped for hours.
Yeah. Oh, we shouldn't make fun of winter people, because after winter comes spring. I'd like to shift gears on you a little bit, Alison, because you have so much beauty and so much color on your blog. I wanted to ask you, some people garden just for fresh flowers on the table and some for food on their vegetables and herbs. And for some people, gardening is way deeper. It's got more emotion attached. For some people, it's like a recharge. What is gardening for you now?
I think it is actually about, I suppose, creating balance for me. I do think that quite a lot. Whenever I get home from work, first thing I do this time of year when it's still light in the evening is wander around the garden, just get back in touch with it, maybe snip the odd head off something, just to tidy up as I walk around. But it is about, I suppose grounding sounds a bit like a pun, but it is about getting balance and letting the stress of the day go. So that's very important to me in my garden. And also, I grow a lot of plants that, for me, have special meaning or a symbolism. So I grow some plants that my grandmother grew. Mm-hmm. And I look at them and I think of her, and I can hear what she used to say about them. I grow plants that remind me of a place that I might have been to. So there's all sorts of different reasons why plants will end up in my garden. I have to actually like them as well. That helps. But it means that there's almost stories running through it as well, which is very important to me.
Brilliant. I guess after that's for me. I used to view gardening as one more work, more stress. And there was a shift that I caught from my wife to where it was stress reducing. Except for my wife has a thing for bees. We're actually going to grow a little garden just for bees and butterflies next season. I still, when a big bumblebee bumps into me, I'm still a little bit of a city guy in that regard. I'm not a big fan of spiders, and we have some spiders in the garden in the raspberry patch, but I'm learning. I want to talk to you about your garden, Alison, because for some people, we have a lot of people living in the cities listening to this who garden on the patio of their apartment building. And then we have people like Rochelle Greer with a 3-acre garden. It's like a city park in her backyard and everything in between. What's your garden like, Alison? Can you describe it for the listeners?
Yes, it's about a third of an acre in total, which is quite a large garden for. I live in a suburban area of Leicester. I'm only just outside of the city centre, so that's quite large, really, for this sort of situation. My house is semi-detached, so I'm joined on to another house. So the garden's actually on 3 sides of my house. And I suppose it is in different sort of areas as well, in that the front garden's quite formal. I have, I say a knot garden, that makes it sound a little bit more possibly overblown than it really is. But I have a knot garden in the front garden, which is very formal. Then at the back, I've got quite cottage garden-y type borders nearer to the house. And then as it gets further back, I have some what we call prairie planting, and then I have a wild garden in probably about the top third.
Ding, ding, ding. My wife gave me a list of questions to ask you. The wild garden. She said, how did you start it? How do you how do you control it, I think she said. And have you found any challenges with the wild garden?
Oh, lots of challenges. In some ways, it probably sounds a bit strange, but the garden sort of looks quite flat, but there's definite sort of contours to it. There's definite. When I first moved in, it was just like a field. There were no plants in it whatsoever. There was just one tree sort of in almost towards the back of the garden. And just as I used to, sort of as I was walking around and thinking and planning, there was just something about the top third that I thought, I'm going to let this just grow and see what happens. Partly it was also because it was an awful lot of grass to mow, and you're thinking, I don't actually want to mow this all the time. It's too much. So what I did was, first of all, the first year, I just let it grow, just let the grass do whatever it wanted, and I just cut paths through it so I could actually still walk through it. And I thought I'd see what happens. What mainly happened was I got an awful lot of nettles and an awful lot of thistles, which aren't bad, apart from they hurt if you actually walk through them and they sting you. But they're very good for insects and wildlife. They love it. So I still let them grow, but I do actually cut them out so that there's not too many, because they'll swamp everything else. And then the year after that, I bought some native wildflower plugs, little tiny plants, and I dotted them around. And it took a couple of years for them really to take hold, but they still keep coming back year on year. And they just add some sort of extra colour, and again, the wildlife really like them. And every year, I tend to move the paths a little, so I've got a bit of variation. But there's quite a lot of bulbs in there now, a lot of spring bulbs that just come up and give it a bit of colour as well. So yes, it's worked quite well. Sometimes the grass gets a little high, and if it flops over in the rain, it can look a bit untidy, but then it's wild, so don't really want it to look too tame.
Mm-hmm. So you basically inherited a football pitch with a tree.
Yes.
And you went to work on it. I was going to ask you, what was it like the first season, but you said you didn't try to do all the work in one go.
No.
That's very man-driven. The ego of the man is, I'm going to conquer this land. And then we just collapse and so exhausted from trying to bite off more than we can chew.
It has been not little by little, I suppose. It's certainly had phases where I've done quite a lot of work and then I've let that settle, and then I've done a bit more work. But I knew that if I tried to sort of cut all the borders out straight away, I would just spend my life weeding them.
Mm-hmm. On your blog, you've written articles about a variety of plants that you love, and you've been tending geraniums and nasturtiums and begonias. What's that been like for you on just the pure, beautiful flower side?
It's been really interesting, actually. I mean, the begonia thing is quite a few people laugh at me for that, because if you'd have asked me a few years ago, I've told you I hated them, and that I just didn't really see any pleasure in them, and I thought that they were very difficult to grow as well. I just thought they just curled up and died on me most of the time. And then a few years ago, I went somewhere and I saw one in a friend's house, and I thought, oh, I like that. So I ended up buying that begonia, and it sort of led to all sorts of different ones that I now own. Some that are out in the garden, some that are very hardy, but then some that actually do need a bit of care. But there's such a variety of them. You know, begonias, there's more than... You can have completely different looking plants, but they're all from the same family. So I suppose that's been a voyage of discovery for me, really. And also, I think important to... you can have quite a lot of plant snobbery, where you sort of look at a plant and go, oh, I don't like that. But actually, if you give it a chance, it can be quite a good plant.
Mm. Amongst your circle of friends and family, are you into flower sharing or bulb sharing, or are you kind of the gardener in your circle?
In terms of family, I am the gardener, pretty much. But in terms of friends, we do quite a lot of plant swapping and seed swapping. And that's quite nice. And actually Twitter has just, grown that circle of people who swap plants and seeds with. And it's really nice, and it's such a friendly thing to do. So again, you know, I've got plants in my garden that I look at, and I know who's given me that, or I know who sent me the seeds. And you can think of them while you look at it, and it's nice. It's it is a very friendly thing to do.
I love it. Great. I want you to take a minute and share with the listeners, what's your garden like this year? Is there anything you're particularly proud of? Has anything surprised you? And has anything frustrated you?
I think the thing that's frustrating me most at the moment is my pond. It's absolutely full of this stuff called parrotweed, which is very invasive. And this year, I've really struggled with it. And I know that in the autumn, I'm going to have to get some waders on and just pull every bit of it out of the pond. So that's not been good this year. In terms of what's pleased me, I've got quite a lot of grasses in the garden, and I've got some Stipa gigantica, which is really tall this year and has really beautiful sort of grass flower heads on it. And that's looked quite dramatic this year, so I'm pleased about that. And what was the other question?
Any surprises?
Surprises? Well, I suppose not necessarily a surprise, but in terms of patience, I've had some peonies flower this year that I've been waiting 3 years for them to flower. So that's like, at last.
Brilliant.
I've actually done something. so that's quite good.
That's like 3 years is like university waiting for it to flower. That's brilliant. Do you have photos on your blog about that?
Yes, because it was a peony that I grew from seed, so I was quite smug about it as well, actually, because I've never grown one from seed before.
Yes, victory. Nice. Alison, is there anything you want to try to experiment with next year in your garden?
I don't have anything in particular that I'm thinking at the moment. The one thing I really want to happen next year is I want my quince tree to give me a quince. That is my absolute obsession at the moment, waiting for it mature enough to give me some fruit.
Nice.
But otherwise, and I suppose the main area I've started working on recently is my driveway, and that I think next year is going to take quite a lot of development as well. So that's probably going to be the main challenge next year, trying to make my driveway look presentable.
Yeah, I saw that on your blog, the driveway project.
Yes.
Well, that's the great thing about a gardener is you're never bored.
No.
There's always a new patch of soil to conquer. Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors and then come back and play 5 quick questions. Attention gardeners, do you love perennial flowers? Get a free online catalog and 10% off your first order of bulbs at Bloom & Bulbs. I set up a link just for podcast listeners. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/bulb for your special bonus. Are you concerned about toxic chemicals, GMOs, and frankenfood? Don't panic. Grow organic. Discover my new resource for organic gardening. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/myorganic. Do you love homegrown tomatoes? Free report reveals the 5 dirt cheap tools I use to grow 22 types of heirloom tomatoes, including my secret soil booster. Download your copy for free today at www.backtomygarden.com/free report. Well, we're looking at the clock, Alison. Our 30 minutes is rapidly going by, and now is the time in the show where we get to play everybody's favorite game called 5 Quick Questions. This is a chance for you to share your wisdom and experience with novice gardeners. Are you ready to play?
Yes, okay.
All right. Question number 1. In your opinion, what do you think stops most people from trying gardening?
I think it's lack of knowledge. I think they're frightened that they might kill a plant or, it just won't work. And actually, at the end of the day, you have to do that because it's the only way you'll learn. And thankfully, they are only plants, so you're not going to get into trouble if one actually dies on you.
Your first garden, did anything not grow?
Oh, lots of things didn't. So many things didn't grow. I can't even think of a specific. It was quite painful, really. But then I still grow quite a lot of annuals from seed, and it's actually quite difficult to fail with them in a lot of ways. They're very easy. So once I worked out what was easy and would work, I stuck with that and then built from there.
Yeah, my wife has gotten me into a little bit of flower gardening, and she said, okay, you're going to learn how to grow nasturtiums. And she had me build a trellis and a little pot. And then she said, oh, yeah, you can eat these. And I thought she was playing a trick on me. I said, I'm not eating that. You eat that. But, yeah, they're in the salads. They're quite beautiful. Very good. Question 2. In all of your gardening career, what is the single best piece of gardening advice that you've ever received?
I think it was about pruning, really, because I think people always worry about what is the best time to prune something. And actually, by and large, it doesn't matter, because you probably won't kill it if you prune it at the wrong time. Probably the worst thing that will happen is you might not get any flowers when you expect to get something. But it'll recover. So I think not worrying about things and just trying, just having a go, I think is probably the best advice I ever had.
I love it. Because so many people are obsessed with rules, and pruning has rules.
Yes.
Don't prune under the full moon, and I'll prune when I want to. Good for you. Alison, helping out the new person. The internet is such a big place. Can you recommend 2 websites that are really good that you like for gardeners?
Certainly here in the UK, the Royal Horticultural Society's website is extremely good. They're an extremely good organisation. If you're a member, they give you all sorts of advice. You can have all sorts of interaction with them. And obviously they do the large flower shows here in the UK, such as the Chelsea Flower Show. So that's a really good website. And again, actually, I suppose the other one's more UK-based as well, which is the National Garden Scheme, which is a scheme where ordinary people can open their gardens for charity. And in the summer, well, in fact, mostly most of the year, you can find a garden that's open, probably not very far from you, that isn't normally open to the public. And actually just being able to visit other people's gardens and see what they've done, you learn so much. And I find that invaluable.
I love it. Over here, people would say, oh, stop being nosy, but you learn from other gardeners.
You do learn from them, but you can be nosy as well. So, it's a win-win.
It's an open house. That's wonderful. Question 4. A lot of people in gardening love to read books. Can you recommend a brilliant book for a novice gardener to read?
One of my favourite gardening books is The Well-Tempered Gardener by Christopher Lloyd. And it's not a conventional gardening book in that it's not full of glossy pictures, but it is, a book to read. You sit and read it, but it is so full of advice, and it is very down to earth. And he's also got a very clear sense of humour that comes out in it as well. But he just talks in such a wonderful way, and I love that book, and I can just sit and read it again and again.
Fantastic. The Well-Tempered Gardener. For those of you driving or jogging, I'll put a link in the show notes under Alison's page by Christopher Lloyd.
Yes.
Question 5. This is a fun one. You get to predict the future. What's the number one thing that you want every gardener should try to grow next year?
The one plant I always say to people that they should grow, and particularly if they haven't done so before, and this is going to make you laugh, It is nasturtiums. Because they are so easy, they are so colourful, they're useful. I mean, like you said, they're edible, but I grow them in various parts of the garden, but I always grow them in my vegetable patch, particularly near my French beans, because they attract the black fly away from the French beans. And they're really good if you want to get children into gardening, because the seeds are big. So children can actually hold the seeds easily and plant them easily. So, and they're pretty. They're just good, pretty flowers. So, yes, nasturtiums are the thing I always recommend to people.
Wow, Alison, that was brilliant. So you put them near your beans to pull the pests away?
Yes. And it works.
That's gold.
I don't always think all these things work, but that actually does.
Companion planting. Nice. Well, for those of you listening, I hope you got a lot out of this episode. I took about a half a page of notes, and I'll put some of them on the blog for you. Make sure you follow Alison on Twitter at PAPAVER, and check out her beautiful blog and website at www.blackberrygarden.co.uk. If you're a photography fan, you're going to just adore some of the color in that site. Alison, you've been a brilliant guest. I'm actually going to give you the last word today. Can you leave our listeners with either a pearl of wisdom or a note of encouragement on their gardening adventure?
I think it is just about really enjoying being in your garden. Don't let it become a chore. It doesn't matter actually what you do out there. Even if all you want to do is grow one tree or one plant, just do it and enjoy it, and you'll get so much pleasure back from it, you'll never regret it.
Absolutely fantastic. Alison, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Hello, garden lover. It's Dave. All of the links, resources, and websites mentioned in this episode will be posted at www.backtomygarden.com/32. If you enjoyed this episode, please come to the website and click share and help us reach more gardeners. Have a great day. Happy gardening.